Every clip you're about to see was sent directly to Wham Bam Dashcam, including the insane accidents, dumb drivers, and plenty of road rage. Chris was headed to get a haircut when the driver of a Nissan Rogue failed to yield and turned across his lane. Chris stood on the brake pedal, but it wasn't enough. When Chris's 1997 Toyota 4Runner slammed into the Rogue SUV, the impact sent the Toyota onto its side and totaled both vehicles. Chris was able to climb out of his car's sunroof with the help of some bikers who witnessed the crash. Both vehicles had to be towed away, and Chris is sad that his 4Runner was wrecked with the odometer fewer than 4,000 miles away from 500,000 miles. When police arrived, they found the Nissan driver at fault. Chris used the insurance settlement to buy a 2005 4Runner, 8 years newer than the last one. Robert was driving his Jeep Gladiator when he approached a traffic light. The driver on his right had left a gap for an SUV to exit a driveway, so Robert stopped to avoid hitting them. Unfortunately, the driver of a Mustang driving up the turn lane didn't notice the SUV and ran into it even while slamming on the brakes. Robert gave a copy of his dashcam footage to the police. Reese was headed to a thrift store when he got into a turn lane, the wrong turn lane. He was blinded by oncoming headlights and couldn't see that the lane he'd gotten into ended and a new one began with an island between them. He dodged the pole in the middle, and thankfully only his alignment was damaged. This submitter asked to remain anonymous, and you'll see why. He was driving over 70 miles per hour in a 40 mile per hour residential zone on his way to see family at an assisted living facility. When he approached a roundabout, traffic ahead of him was yielding for traffic in the roundabout. Even though he hit the brakes and tried to swerve, his tires lost all traction. Still going 50 miles per hour, he slammed into an Amazon van. He's filed an insurance claim, but he doesn't know yet if the car is totaled. This submitter looked in his rearview mirror and spotted the driver of a Ram truck road raging against the driver of a Porsche. The pickup driver repeatedly tried passing the Porsche in the bike lane before finally turning onto another road. It looks like the drivers traded words before the pickup drove off. I know someone is going to be upset by how I pronounce Porsche, but it's probably the same person who thinks I pronounce Huracan incorrectly, and they probably live in Nevada. Evan was driving down a highway when a Hyundai driver, distracted by an accident seen on the left, suddenly swerved into Evan's lane to avoid rear-ending a Mini Cooper. Evan dodged onto the shoulder to avoid being sideswiped, but he wasn't sure if contact had been made. Thankfully, he couldn't find any damage to his Jeep Grand Cherokee after stopping. Paul was driving in Tijuana, Mexico, in an area notorious for reckless drivers. While the driver behind him was looking down at her phone, she rear-ended Paul's Kia Rio. The Mazda had no front license plate. It had a California plate in the back, but was unregistered in Mexico and uninsured. It's no surprise that the driver and her passenger fled the scene, leaving Paul to pay a $1,000 deductible. He told us the police are looking for them, so if you know who they are, let us know and we'll pass it along. Chris was heading to cross the border into Canada when he encountered another driver who'd evidently decided to stay in the United States.
The wrong way! In the highway!
Oops! Chris wonders if the guy missed the big bright wrong way signs and asked us if they needed to be bigger and or redder. Venkat was headed home from work and had stopped at a red light when a RAV4 driver decided to cut across active traffic and run the red light. The driver of the Toyota SUV forced their way across the intersection before driving off. Venkat told us they love the Wham Bam channels, and this was their first Wham Bam moment since buying a Dashcam. Nathaniel was driving to class when a driver up ahead of him stopped, probably trying to figure out how to turn left around the scene of a previous collision.
Damn Dashcam, here I come.
Sadly, the driver right behind them was rubbernecking and rear-ended the SUV. Remember, when you see any dangerous situation while driving, pay attention in every direction. Nathaniel asked us to shout out his roommates Jake and Miguel and told us they watch Wham Bam videos together all the time. Morgan was waiting in a left turn lane behind a Tesla Model 3. When the light turned green, the other driver didn't move, so Morgan gave them a friendly honk. What they did next makes them this week's Tesla behaving badly.
That Tesla man can't drive. That Tesla man can't drive.
After both drivers had made a U-turn, the Model 3 driver intentionally cut Morgan off and stayed ahead of him, eventually forcing him to a complete stop even though there was no traffic ahead. Eventually, Morgan was able to get ahead of the Tesla driver, but then he followed Morgan until he was able to again cut him off and brake check him. Morgan was able to get away from the road-raging Tesla driver, but by then he was already on the phone with 911. He ended up making a police report, including his dashcam footage as evidence, and he's now waiting for a follow-up. George was on his way home from work when he was nearly hit by a taxi driver who drove across every lane to make his exit.
Fucking idiot.
George was shocked at how close the taxi got to hitting his car, but his quick swerve made the difference and prevented any contact from being made. Kalen was headed north on I-495 when he merged right in anticipation of slowdowns in the left lane. A few seconds later, he watched a pickup truck rear-end a sedan. Kalen didn't stick around due to the bad traffic, but he remarked that he finally had some collision footage after being a commuter in DC for almost a year. I'm sorry, did you not think 2 road rage clips was enough? Well, here comes another one. Mustafa was driving toward Modesto when a pickup driver suddenly cut him off. When the pickup driver began brake checking him, Mustafa tried to get out from behind him, but the pickup driver kept swerving back in front of him. He then sped off, and Mustafa returned to the left lane. Mustafa can't figure out why he did this. I'm not justifying the pickup driver's actions, but I think his reasons are pretty obvious. Let Mustafa know your theory in the comments below. Logan was going around 50 miles per hour when a Jeep driver pulled out in front of him. Logan made an evasive maneuver and swerved around the SUV. Thankfully, no contact was made. Our next submitter wasn't so lucky. Luke's Acura TLX was parked at a hotel when it was Honda bumped by a driver who'd been blocked in by a box truck.
Honda bumped! Honda bumped!
The Honda driver pulled out at an angle, clipping Luke's car. After pulling forward, he took another run at it, literally. He fled the scene of the accident. Sadly, neither Luke's dashcam nor the hotel cameras got a shot of his license plate. Luke made a police report anyway, so if you recognize this vehicle and its stickers, well, you know. Julianne was on her way to a restaurant with her boyfriend for dinner when they spotted an electrical transformer on fire. Suddenly, it exploded. The transformer exploded again, arcing all over the place before Julianne turned and drove away. Thankfully, firefighters were right around the corner. Julianne told us she bought her dashcam when she discovered our channel after being involved in a hit and run. Zach was on his way home from work when a Buick driver cut around him by going straight from a right turn only lane, and Zach had to put his brake pedal to the floor to avoid hitting him. Stopping so suddenly nearly caused Zach to be rear-ended by a Tahoe. Thankfully, his Nissan Leaf escaped unscathed. Zach told us he loves all our channels and he's looking forward to someday driving an Aptera. Me too, bro, me too. Brendan was on his way to work when another driver cut out in front of him. When Brendan hit the brakes, he was rear-ended by a BMW driver who promptly drove around him and fled the scene. State troopers responded, as did Brendan's aunt and uncle who live nearby. Since the BMW driver was never located, Brendan's insurance provider is paying $6,500 to fix his Chevy Malibu. Did we mention this happened on Brendan's birthday, which also happened to be Easter this year? Happy birthday, I guess. We didn't get you anything, sorry. Okay, we had a Tesla behaving badly and a Honda bump, but I feel like we're forgetting something. Oh yeah, the cart demon! Jacob spotted it hunting in a Target parking lot one night, but thankfully it ran into a curb instead of his Jeep. That was a close one.
The cart demon.
Have you had any close calls with the cart demon? Come share your stories in our patron-exclusive Discord server. See you there!